and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and lovers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe. We are, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe. Who we are.
Each Sunday, we take time in our service to acknowledge that we bring abundant joys and concerns with us into this community. If you are joining us online, I invite you to put any joys or concerns you want the community to know about in the comments down below the video. If you're here in person, we have a book next to our Joys and Concerns bowl where people write some things that they want to share. And the first one we have is from Laura Household. Healing thoughts as we grieve the unexpected loss of our dear friend Kelly. She leaves behind her 8-year-old family and the memory of her kind heart. Healing thoughts and grief for Kelly. We also have a stone of gratitude. One stone. I'm going to have a lot of names. One stone for a lot of names. Our second floor hallway painters, Lori and Mark, Pam, Ken, Ray, Brian, Beth, Ryan, Tom, Bill, Steve, Bob, Carol, Kate, Kat, and Dell did some preparation, but wants you to know she did not paint it all herself. So thank you to all of our second floor hallway painters. That seems like the way a community ought to do things, with that many names to read off. Thank you. What else would you like to acknowledge this morning? I invite you to come forward and place a stone in the water for any joys or concerns you carry with you today.
A love something, a cautious living love something. No matter it was, no matter where you flower is a love something. A flower is the heart of spring that makes the rolling hillside sing. That gentle wind that blows, blows gently, for it knows a flower is a love something. Blow such a miracle. Azalea is painting pale moonbeam. Gardenia is floating through daydreams. No matter where it grows, no matter where you go, a flower is a lovesome thing. Azalea's painting pale moonbeams. Gardenia is floating through daydreams. No matter where it grows, no matter where you go, a flower is a lovesome thing.
Thank you, Anya. We place a stone for those joys and concerns shared online today. And a stone for those things that remain in the vaults of our hearts. A phrase we now attribute to Dr. Alan Georgia.
Well, good morning. I'm sure this will come as a complete shock to all of you, but I've been thinking a lot about beginnings and endings lately. And the way those have shown up in my life recently is books. Is anyone else here? I can't imagine speaking to this UU congregation. I have very serious book problems, and I've been very aware of it this week, cleaning things up, moving things around. Oh, too many books. Thinking about beginnings and endings because crucial thing for having books, of course, is having bookends. Now, if you're anything like me, which is to say that you are maybe a little bit lazy and a little bit cheap, you don't own a lot of proper bookends. And proper bookends are actually really important because it's actually hard to make books stand on their own because they topple like right over. Like that's just what they do. So again, if you're sort of cheap and lazy like me, often I just like get a heavy thing to like wedge into the side. And you kind of smush them together that way. Sometimes because I'm especially lazy and especially cheap. That heavy thing will just be like books on books. Little moment here. But a proper bookend is kind of an amazing thing, actually, because a proper bookend is actually so small. Like, look how small this is. I can wedge like a huge weight, but like over time, especially with movement and vibration, the books will still shoot themselves off the shelf eventually. So you have this remarkable device that slides. This is the crucial part. It's not the thin part on the outside. It's the long thing underneath that creates a sense of force as the books weigh upon one another. And then now you have this amazing phenomenon. And the books will stay like this for years and years. I mean, like libraries, just books that people never touch. And isn't this like community, these bookends? I think about this with our worship. 1 hour on Sundays, we gather together. But much like this very thin part, it's the underneath bit that matters. It's the way that we'll become and gather to do our time to be in community with one another. That is the thing that connects us then for the rest of the week. It's all of these moments. And when we have this chance to be together and do for one another in spaces like this, the chance to know one another and authentically be known, that opportunity, that's the undergirding part. It's the thing that keeps us together. And I do have to say, at this stage of the world's evolution, and because I am going through a pretty meaningful transition, I'm not sure anything matters that much than what we're doing right now. I think this is kind of what's holding it all together. Those chances we have where we be together, to connect in this way, it's what's keeping us from filling off the shelves. Today, of course, is a bookend day for me, but also what I'm reminded of is that all of these days have been bookend days. All of those days are the things that have been creating this that knits under my whole experience, my whole life, and the lives of each of us here. It's the thing that allows us to come to a place where we gather first as a community so that strangers become neighbors, and then neighbors become friends, and then friends become family, and deeply we know and are known. Thank you.
Our offering partner today is Faith Communities Together for a Sustainable Future, or FACT. FACT believes in the moral imperative of climate change, engaging faith communities and people of conscience in the interconnectedness and sacredness of the natural world and one another. Pastor Margaret Mills, Reverend Jim Deming, and Minister Ten Venida have worked together since 2011 to connect faith-based communities to environmental movements and legislation. FACT has organized and been a part of rallies, prayer vigils, media changes, health registries, street art, and education programs, all to bring public and governmental support to outlawing fracking in the oil industry. FACT is committed to educating, inspiring, advocating, and organizing for a just transition to renewable energy sources, sustainable practices, and policies that address climate change. Please place your offering, cash or check, made payable to UUCC in the collection plate as it is passed. You may also contribute via Cash App to $UUCC 44122. Please use the memo line to indicate today's date and our plate recipient, FACT.
The leaves were brown, came tumbling down. Remember that September day. The sun went out just like a dying ember. That September in the rain. To every word of love I heard you whisper, the raindrops seem to play a sweet refrain. Though spring is here to me, it's still September. That September in the rain. September in the rain. Dying ember, that September dwee da dee, ba ba dee da da ya dee, ba da da dee da dee da la dee, ba. Though spring is said to me, it's still September. September in the rain. That's September. Oh, September in the rain.
And the youth said, "Speak to us of friendship." And he answered, saying, "Your friend is your needs answered. He is your field which you sow with love, Lord, and your fireside. For you come to him with your hunger, and you seek him for peace. When your friend speaks his mind, you fear not the nay in your own mind, nor do you withhold the I. And when he is silent, your heart ceases not to his heart. For without words, in friendship, all thoughts, all desires are born and shared, with joy that is unacclaimed. When you part from your friend, you grieve not, for that which you love most in him may be clearer in his absence, as the mountain to the climber is clearer from the plain. And let there be no purpose in friendship save the deepening of the spirit. For love that speaks aught but the disclosure of its own mystery is not love, but a net cast forth, and only the unprofitable is caught. And let your best before your friend. If he must know the ebb of your tide, let him know its flood also. For what is your friend that you should seek him with hours to kill? Seek him always with hours to live. For it is his to fill your need, but not your emptiness. And in the sweetness of friendship let there be laughter and sharing of pleasures. For in the dew of little things, find and is refreshed.
In the dew of little things, the heart finds its morning and is refreshed. The little cries that we get responses that matter are what build those foundations that help us not fall all over the place. People are always trying to safely connect. It's a biological imperative. We are mammals. You may not have learned this in biology, but human beings are mammals. We are not all that different from other mammals in a lot of ways. We like to think we're very, very special. But mammals are not laid and hatched like reptiles. Mammals mature in the context of relationships. And even before we have friends that can fill our needs but not our emptiness, as Khalil Gibran puts it, habits of connection from our earliest caregivers. From our very earliest days, we need other people in order to, and safe, stable connection is a biological being. So when we start off signaling this need for connection, we start off and we signal for a few different reasons. Maybe we have a desire for something, or maybe we're in distress. We are delighted. We want to share those things with other people. You might think of it, our mother, whoever it happens to be, the caregiver is off on the border of things, but on the playground, and maybe there is a swing, and the child wants a push on the swing, and so that desire prompts us to look back to the caregiver. Or we decide that we are going to run around and we trip over something and we skin our knee and we are in distress, and so we look to our caregiver to respond to that distress. Or we find something gooey and unidentified and we are about to stick our fingers in it, and we look to our caregiver because we are just delighted by this discovery of ours and we want to share it with somebody else. And whoever our caregiver is in that moment can respond. We need that response to have a few qualities. It needs to be what we're asking for, so it needs to match what we're asking for. It needs to be timely. It needs to be of quality, and it needs to be at no cost. They cannot wait until they're screaming and having a meltdown. They need to respond pretty quickly. It needs to be timely. It needs to match what we're asking for. They can't come over and pick us up and put us on the slide if we want to be pushed on the swing. It needs to match. I want to be pushed on the swing. It needs to be quality, so we need to pay attention to this. Push me. Don't sit there and hold on to the chain while you look at your phone. It needs to match. It needs to be high quality, and it needs so not I'll push you on the swing if you to eat your vegetables at dinner. That's a negotiation. That's a response for connection. My mother did this really, really well when we were in Gatlinburg recently. I know we have passed the point where I'm learning about connection, but I'm not, because I'm a human being and we are always learning about connection. So we were eating out someplace in Gatlinburg. They have on the menu. It's been a long time since I have fried okra. And I said, oh, some of these sides look really good, but I really want the fried okra. And my mom immediately said, oh, I'm ordering fried okra, but I'm not going to eat all of it. You can have half of mine. So immediately, she matched what I wanted. She didn't say, well, I'm not getting fried okra, but you can have some of my mashed potatoes. She said, you can have exactly what you're asking for. I expressed a desire. She said, you can have that thing. She said it immediately. She couldn't govern how long it would take for us to get the fried okra, but she also didn't say, I'll give you what's left over after I'm done. She gave me the quality of whatever she's going to get, I'm going to get half of that, which is great. And it wasn't at any cost to me. It wasn't, well, I'll give you some of my fried okra if you give me some of your something else. No cost. It was timely. It matched what I wanted. It was of quality, whatever quality she could determine about the quality of the fried okra. No cost to me. That establishes a safe, stable connection. When we're really, really young, our caregivers establish that with us. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they miss the mark. And if they miss the mark, we do something called protest behavior. I wish I could say we grow out of this, but we do not. Our protest behavior when we're on the playground might be that we have a meltdown and scream because we're not getting the attention that we want. Or our protest behavior might be we take off running so that our caregiver decides they need to chase us because we're doing something unsafe, and that gets their attention. You're not going to push me on the swing? Well, I will show you. I will go darting off out of your line of sight. Or we might go to our caregiver and shake them. Listen, listen, listen. I need to be pushed on the swing. Mama, mama, dada, dada, whatever it happens to be. We want their attention. We will go and get their attention. Protest behavior. If our caregivers respond well to that and fix things, it establishes safe, stable connection, just as if they had responded with maybe even if we miss it and we fix it, it establishes the same degree of safe, stable connection for us. If parents get it right, if they respond effectively 30% of the time, and they repair well the other 70% of the time, you don't have to get it perfect. It's the repairing things that we have a hard time with sometimes. You could probably go even lower than 30%. of getting it right if you repair things well. But when we don't get that response that we need and when things are not repaired well, we adapt. We're human beings. We adapt to things. So there are a few different ways where this happens, a few patterns that researchers have identified. When we don't get the kind of response that we need, we do a few different things. Sometimes our caregiver just isn't available. We cry out for something and we get no response. Whether it's desire or delight or it's distress, we just don't get a meaningful response from our caregiver. And we learn at a very young age that nobody's going to answer us when we reach out for connection. Biological imperative, the need doesn't change. We still need safe, stable connection, but we learn at a very young age that we're not going to get it. And so this is about 7 to 15% of the U.S. population. In terms of our congregation, that would be 21 to 45 people in our congregation. We're not going to guess who it is. That's not the game of the day. 21 to 45 people in our congregation learned at a very early age that their cries for connection were going to get no response from anybody. Sometimes our caregivers respond in a way that's harmful to us. And this might not be outright abuse. It might just be that our caregivers have not learned how to respond well. And so when we reach out for connection, we get something that's hurtful back in return. Maybe we get negotiation back. Maybe we get something that's more harmful than that. Maybe we get punished somehow for needing connection. And so to feel safe, we might learn that we have to ask permission for everything. We have to be really, really careful about our connections. Or maybe we learn that we have to avoid asking for help unless it's really, really, really important. This is around 5% of the U.S. population. So around 75 people in our congregation learned really young that this thing that they need was. And then sometimes our caregivers are just unpredictable. Sometimes our caregivers are inconsistent with the way that they respond. Sometimes we get what we need, and sometimes we don't, and there's no predictability to it. There's no pattern to it. We just learn that we're going to get random results when we ask for connection. And so in children, this winds up with, you can see kind of a dazed look on some children's faces. They seem a little bit disorganized, confused. As we grow up, that leads to behavior that's like unpredictable, but also self-sabotaging sometimes. We say we want one thing in our relationships, but we do things that lead in a different direction. We have trust issues. We have difficulty with boundaries, setting boundaries for ourselves and honoring other people's boundaries. That's about 20% of the U.S. population, so around 60 people in our congregation. The news is, the highest percentage is people who establish that safe, stable connection. About 50%, about half of the U.S. population establishes that sense of safe, stable connection with their caregivers early on. The bad news is it's only about half. Only about half. That goes for our community, that goes for any other place where we might be with human beings. And this is not about blame. This is not about telling our caregivers that they did a bad job. Our caregivers, I really, really believe this. I haven't always believed this, but I really, really, really believe this. Our caregivers did the very best that they could with what they had at the time. I know that I really firmly believe that our caregivers did the very best that they could with what they had at the time. And it just might not have been what we needed. It might not have been possible for them to provide what we needed. And so we adapted. We figured out a way to interpret what was coming at us. This is also not about blame for us. This is not a moral stance. Whether we have safe, stable connection or whether we avoid asking for what we need, that's not a good or bad person kind of thing. It's just a thing that we learned how to do. We do the things that we learned how to do because that's what we learned how to do. It's not good person, bad person. We are still Unitarian Universalists who affirm the inherent worthiness of everybody. The weird thing is, when we build community, we become caregivers for one another. Not that we behave parentally toward one another, but in a community, we give and receive care. And so we treat one another like caregivers. We expect things from one another the way we learned to expect things when we were first learning how relationships work. Whatever learned into all of our relationships. So if we learned early on that we could rely on our caregivers to provide appropriate responses to our signals for connection, then we expect other people to do that. And we don't take it personally if they get it wrong. We just expect that connection is possible, and it'll happen when it happens, and sometimes we'll miss the mark. But if we learned early on that we have to protect ourselves from our caregivers because they were unresponsive to our cries for connection, or we wound up getting hurt when we asked for connection with them, or they responded in unpredictable ways, we learn at a really early age that's what we should expect from everybody. That's our default starting point for human relationships. So how do we co-create a meaningful vision for the future, or even plan for a holiday event, when half of the people, not just here, but here, half of the people everywhere, but half of the people here start from a position of distrust or avoidance or self-sabotage, because that's what we learned. As I said, the good news of Unitarian Universalism is that we are all inherently worthy of love and belonging, every last one of us. And so we create a community based on that. None of this is about being good people or bad people or whether we're moral. None of this is about our worthiness. This is an opportunity to create safe, secure connection with one another in a way that we might have missed when we were first learning about human connection. We get an opportunity to rewire and to recalibrate our sense of connection with one another. And there's also the good news of human behavior, because people are capable of change. We do it all the time. We learn new things. We can grow into new ways of being. We can learn new ways of trusting and connecting and caring for one another. We to imagine the possibility of receiving an appropriate response to our cry for connection, whether we're in distress or whether we're delighted about something or whether we are desiring something. We need to be safe enough to recognize the possibility that we can receive a meaningful response from that. And maybe we need to be intentional about how we offer a meaningful response to one another when we get those signals of distress or desire or delight. And when that doesn't happen, when we get it wrong, which we inevitably will do, if we tend to that rupture and repair it well, we will still establish safe, secure connection with one another. We don't have to get it perfect. We just have to give one another a chance to fix what we break. And if we do that well, we can do all sorts of things. Our ministries can collaborate better and dream bigger and accomplish more. Our leadership can be empowered and sustainable. We can communicate more consistently and well, but not tending to the quality of our connections, not making it important that we respond to one another's cries for connection, whether it's distress or desire or delight. If we don't do that, it makes everything else more difficult, maybe even impossible. Because we learned something about human relationships from our earliest caregivers that we never unlearned. And half of us, half of the people on your committees, half of the people in your covenant groups, half of the people in your leadership, half of the people sitting in the pews right now, learned that we cannot trust the people around us to provide something that we need as a biological imperative: safe, stable connection. This is our opportunity as a spiritual community to reclaim that need and to address it in a way that satisfies our souls. So, again, this is not about diagnosing one another. This is not looking around and saying, I know which kind you are, I know which kind you are. This is being responsible for our own assumptions about connection. What are you starting off as? What's your starting point with human connection? Be aware of your own assumptions. Be responsible for that. And be responsible to one another for tending to those signals for connection and for repairing things when we get it wrong. You say, how do we do that? You already know how to do that. You have already created something to tell you how to do that. You didn't even know it. You intuited it. You knew that you needed to do this, and you made yourselves an instruction manual, and you read it every Sunday. You celebrate differences, you honor boundaries, and you offer compassion and care. You listen to each other deeply with curiosity and wonder. You just speak for yourselves. You don't speak for anybody else. You don't fix anybody else's things. You just speak for yourself, and you don't need to defend yourself or persuade each other. You just need to speak honestly about what you're needing. You create safe and brave space for healthy conflict, creativity, and fun, and you reconcile through forgiving and making amends when we hurt one another. You've already written the instruction manual for how to do this. This can be your laboratory for how we create safe, stable, secure connection with other human beings, and we can practice it here and take it into all sorts of other places. Because half of the people that you work with also did not receive what they needed. Half of the people in the justice groups that we align with did not receive what they needed early on. Half of the people, half of all the people. And we have an opportunity to practice something different. If we tend to this, it may be that what we experience as a result looks a lot like beloved community. May we be bold enough to try and see what happens. Amen. And blessed be. I invite you to rise, embody your spirit as we may your life be as a song. This is a slightly different version than what is in the hymnal, so I invite you to use the words that are in your order of service as we raise our voices together.
My wish for you as now we part is for greater peace to fill your heart with dreams as vast as starry space. So hurt and anger no place. May truth be shared, hearts be healed, and joy for living be revealed. Through every fate and circumstance, may hope lead weary steps to dance, and
May your life be as a song, sounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. May fears be turned with keen insight to wisdom for what's just and right. Where sorrow grows, compassion strong, and pains will pass before too long. May the bounds of our diversity serve a richer harmony. May courage hold your heart so true to smile on love when it smiles on you. May life be as a song, resounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. Let's do that chorus one more time. And may your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night, ever dancing circles in, ever dancing circles in the night.
As we near the time of the summer solstice, the Earth-Centered Spirituality Group is going to be constructing a labyrinth on the West Lawn Tuesday, June 18th at 10 a.m. You are welcome to join them, but I want to warn you, this process involves a lot of bending, and it will take about 2 hours. So see Peggy Lagodny if you want to help. Peggy is right there waving at you. See Peggy today if you would like to help. June 18th, 10 a.m., there is an announcement in the newsletter about that. The labyrinth is a centuries-old form of walking meditation used by many different faiths for spiritual centering and contemplation and prayer. And once it is up, you are welcome to use it. It'll be there between June 21st to 30th. And so you're welcome anytime you want to come up and make use of that labyrinth. There will be a summer solstice gathering around that labyrinth on Thursday, June 20th at 7 p.m., and you are welcome to come and celebrate that. Even if you did not help build the labyrinth, you are welcome to come and walk the labyrinth. Please bring something to sit on, and I think you're inviting people to bring poems and other things to share during that ceremony. Is that right, Peggy? Okay. Summer is almost here, and we're running out of a span of 10 weeks to do the Journey Spiritual Development small group. So if that is something you've been kind of weighing, if you're going to be here consistently for 10 weeks and want to take part in that small group over the summer, please let me know. There will probably be another opportunity in the fall when people's schedules don't have them traveling quite so much, but summer may be the time for you. So let me know if that's something you would like to do. I want to let you know that this coming Wednesday is Juneteenth. We are not going to have a Wednesday supper this coming Wednesday. The building is going to be closed for business. There will be a couple of other activities that will be happening around the property, but staff are off for the holiday on Juneteenth and no supper that night. If you do want to keep the Wednesday suppers going, though, that Sign Up Genius is live, and you can go on there, and we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to share meals together throughout the summer as you would like. We are celebrating Alan after the service today, in case you didn't know. We're going to be in Fellowship Hall. I believe there is sugar. I know there is coffee, and I also believe that there's going to be a microphone there for people to share their fond wishes for Alan as one bookend blurs into another. May we go forth from this place recognizing our possibility here to find friends, not to fill our emptiness, but to meet our needs for connection and care. May we be that for one another and welcome that from one another. Go with peace and courage.
Please join me in reciting our reading. Extinguished. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again.
It's a most unusual day. Feel like throwing my worries away. As an old native-born Californian would say, it's a most unusual day. There's a most unusual sky. Not a sign of a cloud passing by. If my heart won't behave in the usual way, it's a most unusual day. There are people meeting people. There's sunshine everywhere. There are lovers greeting lovers, and a feeling of love in the air. It's a most unusual time. I keep feeling my temperature climb.